Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Our Social Kitchen. My name is Jenna Short. This is the third time we're in this kitchen, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you so much, Our Social Kitchen, for having me back. Today, we are going to be making choux pastry. We're going to be making some profiteroles and some eclairs. I feel like there's a stigma around choux pastry, and a lot of people are intimidated by it. But once you understand how easy it is to make and what to look out for, then it will hopefully not be so intimidating anymore. Without further ado, let's dive in. The ingredients that we're going to be needing, we've got 200 grams of cake flour, we've got 330 grams of whole eggs, 135 grams of butter. I have my salt and my sugar combined in this little container. It's 4 grams of salt and 5 grams of sugar. And we have 165 grams of full fat milk and 165 grams of water combined, just to make it a little bit easier. So to begin, in a pot or a saucepan, we're going to place our milk and water, our butter. All of this gets mixed together before we put it on the heat, and then our salt and our sugar as well. The flour and the eggs will come in at a later stage. And now we're going to take this over to the stove and we're going to bring it to a rapid boil. So I'm going to put this on a high heat because our aim of the next step is to make sure that this comes to a rapid boil and our butter is completely melted. It is easier to cut your butter up into pieces just to make sure that it does melt faster rather than one big chunk. As soon as it comes to a boil, we're going to add our flour. So this is going to take a few minutes. Have your flour ready to go. So basically what we're doing here is we're just melting everything together. And when it comes to a boil, we're going to remove it from the heat and we're going to add our flour. We're having some action in the pot here. If you see our ingredients are about to come to a boil, I'm going to wait for the whole pot to come to a rolling boil before I switch off the heat. Okay, we're going to take our flour and we're going to add in our flour. The heat is no longer on. And now, just gently to make sure that nothing goes out of the pot, use your spatula or a wooden spoon to start working everything together. Take your time when doing this because it's really important to make sure that you work out any lumps that are in the flour. We will cook it on the heat again. This is where your arm workout comes in, right? So if you haven't done arm day, choux pastry is great for arm day. When your one arm gets tired, swap it over to the other arm. It's the only way I'm working out during this time. It's when I make food to eat. Okay, so keep working it with the spatula. You're going to see that there are some lumps in the dough from the flour. So you want to make sure that you're working your dough really well with your spatula, wooden spoon, and squashing out every single lump of flour that you see in the dough. Just take your time to kind of work from one edge of the dough all the way through before you put it back on the heat. You can see we've got a really nice smooth dough now. When you're happy with your dough and all the lumps have been worked out, we're going to place it back on the heat again and we'll cook our dough for 2 minutes on a medium to high heat. My one arm has been thoroughly worked now. We're going to put it back on the heat, about a medium high heat, and when I mean 2 minutes, I mean 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes, and now we're going to cook out our dough. The reason we're cooking it out is because we're actually drying out the dough. It needs to be at a specific dryness in order for when we add our eggs for it to absorb the right amount of liquid. If you take your dough as it is now without cooking it out again, then it's going to be too wet. So when you add your eggs, it's going to be really wet and it's not going to have the right consistency or outcome that we want. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm just spreading out the dough all over the bottom of the saucepan, and then I'm just folding it up and squashing it back down again. It starts to develop a crust at the bottom of the pot, which is a great indication of the fact that we're cooking it out long enough. Okay, so now my timer has gone off for the 2 minute mark. Our dough looks great. It should be around 75 to 80 degrees. You can just use a probe thermometer to check this just to make sure we've cooked it for long enough. So probe thermometer, 75 to 80 degrees, or in a saucepan, 2 minutes on high heat. and we're good. Now we're going to take this over to the mixer. So this is where the rest of the arm power or machine power comes in, thank goodness, because I wouldn't be able to do this last part with my own 2 arms. Into the bowl of a mixer, and we're going to be using a paddle attachment for this. We're going to put our dough into the bowl, and what we're going to do next is, because our dough is really hot right now, we're going to just take the dough with the spatula and we're just going to squash it up the sides of the bowl. And this is just going to help cool it down faster, because, I mean, who has time to wait? Even though we have all the time in the world right now, no one has time to wait for eclairs. You just want to make them and eat them. Now we're going to let that sit for a few minutes just to cool down. We want the final temperature before we add our eggs to be anything less than 65 degrees to continue on to the next step. While we wait, I'll speak about the eggs. Because choux pastry has no leavening agent added to it, such as baking powder or yeast or anything to help it rise, where it gets the air added into it is from the process of adding the eggs. So I have 330 grams of eggs here, and I'm just going to whisk them together. When you're weighing out your eggs, you don't keep them whole. You should whisk them together until they're runny. And the reason for this is because when you add your eggs into your choux pastry, the difference between the perfect consistency or a runny consistency of your choux pastry could literally be half an egg yolk or an egg white. Because the recipe calls for 330 grams of eggs, you may not actually use all of the eggs to get to the right consistency of choux pastry. Don't think that you will always use all the eggs that you have weighed out. We're ready to start mixing our choux pastry. Now is a great time to put the oven on, now that I'm thinking about it. Fan bake at 200 degrees Celsius. It needs a really high temperature to go in. So when you're adding in your egg, this process should definitely not be rushed. Take your time. Okay, so I'm going to add my first addition of egg. As you can see, it's not a lot, go a little bit at a time. I should probably put my eggs in a jug. I'm just going to take the paddle out so I can scrape down the sides. So let's check the consistency. It's nice and thick. It's not dripping off the spatula. If your choux pastry is running any faster than this or straight off the spatula, then it's definitely on the runnier side and it's very hard to work with. It's got a beautiful gloss to it as well, and if I do the drop test, it's not dropping straight off the spatula. It's taking its time to work its way off, which is great. Now, when it comes to piping on a baking tray, the best thing about choux pastry is it's fantastic to make in advance. Got a short shelf life, which is the con, but the pro is the fact that you can make it like weeks in advance. I've got a large round nozzle here. You really want to make sure you've got a large nozzle. If it's too small, your eclairs are going to be really thin. We're not about that life either. Let's take a look if my piping nozzle fits in this bag. Just push it right to the end, just making sure that it's not going to pop out the end. It's going to. We need a new piping bag. Now it's about how to handle the piping bag. So open up the piping bag and turn the piping bag out into your hands. This is the best way to work with the piping bag because it keeps it nice and clean. Piping nozzle in, voila. Now baking tray, prepare it with some baking paper. If you're using baking paper like me, it moves around quite a lot on the tray. Take some of your choux pastry and just squash it down in the corners of your tray, and that's going to help stick your paper or keep your paper in place. Now we are ready to pipe. Into our piping bag. Don't put more than you can handle in your piping bag. Now the next thing is push everything down to the bottom and we twist the piping bag closed at the back, and with my left hand I'm just going to hold the back of this lightly and I'm going to guide with my right hand in front. All the pressure and all the work is coming from the hand at the back, and the hand in the front is just guiding. Let's do some profiteroles to start. You keep your piping bag off of the tray about an inch. You basically just want to push from the back till you get to the size you want. Stop piping, do a little flick so you don't have a point on your choux bun, and stop. Okay, so off the tray, pipe, 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 stop. If you pull it up like that, you're going to have nipply choux buns, okay? I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, then great. All the nipples on all the choux buns. Just flatten it with your finger. You don't have to worry too much about the flick with the piping bag. I often find when I teach people that technique, they focus too much on the flick and their stuff starts looking like poo emojis. For a normal eclair, pipe your eclair. Stop and give it a little flick back. Okay, so just give it a little flick back. I think I have enough to do one teeny tiny one. I'm going to put these now into the oven at 200 degrees. It has to go in at a high temperature to help give it that initial puff and rise. My racks in the oven are evenly spread out. 200 degrees for 10 minutes just to help them puff up. And we're going to lower the temperature of the oven to 160 degrees for at least another half an hour. So I'm just going to put them in now. Some of them are a little generous, you know, but that's my other nickname as well. A great indication of choux pastry, and this is what I call the money shot, is, wait, I need that one. Took the only one that I had cut in half. It should be hollow inside, and I cut this one open, and I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I also cut an eclair open as well. As soon as your choux buns come out of the oven, what I also recommend you do is take a chopstick or a knife or a skewer and poke holes in the bottom of all your eclairs and profiteroles, and what that's going to do is let out the steam that's inside. And also when I'm finished and I'm filling it up, once it's cooled down, take my nozzle, put it in there, and then I'll be able to fill it up. For the eclairs, I've actually put 3 holes, just because if there are walls of choux pastry inside, preventing the filling from going all the way through, 3 holes will make sure that that's a nice and full choux bun. Also make sure once they've come out of the oven, you've cooled them down completely before filling. If you want a really nice crispy choux bun, poke the holes and then put them back in the oven for another 10 minutes at about 100 degrees, just to really dry them out so they're nice and crispy. Choux pastry in general is just such a great thing to play around with. There's so many different things you can do with it. You can even add different things to the pastry itself. Black pepper in the actual dough, poppy seeds for an extra crunch. I really hope that I've helped anyone who's unsure of choux pastry on how to make it and give you the confidence to do so. Thank you so much for watching me. Thank you for Our Social Kitchen for having me back again. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Please don't forget to support Our Social Kitchen and like their page to watch more of these videos, and have a happy morning everyone, and a great day, and happy baking, and may everyone make most successful choux pastry.